We decided to have some fun this quarter. We have a talented composer in our ranks. Josh Borrero has been in the trumpet section with the orchestra for more than a few seasons, and he sort of subtly let it be known that he's a composer and that he likes to write things. And as I saw more and more of the things that he had been composing at home, we found ourselves in a conversation about allowing the orchestra to read through some of it. And after reading through some of it, we found ourselves in a conversation about giving him an opportunity to have one of his pieces, let's say, premiered, because it is. And so, as you can see on the program for today, the next selection is a composition by one of our own, and Josh will be conducting it. Please welcome him to the podium. We have a lot of talent in this orchestra. We have a lot of talent. I do want to take just a moment. Throughout the year, a lot of the musicians that are in the Youth Symphony, and indeed in the other orchestras as well, they participate in other school, not just their school orchestras, but in school league functions, things like solo and ensemble. And a number of the students in this particular ensemble did the same in their regional contests earlier this year. And they won their regional contests, which means they were subsequently elected to go to the state solo and ensemble contest, which happens at the end of April. And what I would like to do is to recognize those individuals. Folks, if you went to state this year, will you please stand up? Stay right there. Stay right there. And it's like a sporting event. It's the best of the best from all over the state of Washington. The event is hosted by Washington Music Educators Association, WMEA. And when they go to state, they are not only performing for the judges and receiving a written adjudication, but it's a contest. And so, folks, if you placed at state, either first, second, or third, you got a place at state, remain standing, otherwise go ahead and have a seat. And if you were either a soloist or in an ensemble that won state, would you please remain standing? So we have a lot of talent in this orchestra, and we are proud. We're proud of all of them for the accomplishments and for sharing their many, many talents with Cascade Youth Symphony Orchestra. Sadly, some of these musicians are seniors, and while the age limitation in CYSO does actually go through 21, most of the seniors these days do end up leaving us. Not all of them, but most of them do. And so we want to take a moment and we want to just recognize our seniors. If you're a senior in the orchestra, I want you to come up here. Just come on up. And stand in a line. Wow, there's a lot of you. I assure some of you, maybe you didn't pass that physics class. You're not going to be leaving. No. Ladies and gentlemen, the seniors of the Cascade Youth Symphony Orchestra. And I would add, this includes not only the seniors in the Youth Symphony, but the seniors in our whole organization. Because indeed, we have some in junior and in the other orchestras as well, and they are leaders for us no matter what group they happen to be in. We have a gift for you. We have a gift for you. It's a gold bar. No, not quite that. But it is a bar. And so, how do you want to do this? They're taking up all the room as they come off. Okay, we're going to have you go off this direction, and as you go by Meredith, you will get your outrageously expensive gift that we've spared no expense. Okay, go ahead. being here. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Pleasure. Thank you so much. I think I was just saying to them the other night, I am so fortunate. I don't know if I actually deserve the opportunity to be here to work with these talented young musicians, but I'll take it. We are so fortunate in CYSO, actually throughout our area, to have such fabulous music programs that come into this organization. CYSO knows that the success of our organization is built on the foundation of the public school music programs in our area. And I want to take a moment to recognize some of the folks, they're not here with us, but to recognize the folks that have created that foundation, because it's not an accident, and it's something that was forged many, many years ago. These are the teachers who had a vision, the teachers who came into our public schools. They knew the value of music education. They grew those programs, and they set a standard that we get to enjoy through these days. And sadly, some of those music educators, they're leaving us now. They're no longer with us. A few months ago, we lost one of the most important people in the Edmonds School District. A gentleman by the name of Frank DeMero is no longer with us. More recently, a very influential individual, a fantastic music educator, a gentleman by the name of Ken Noreen, passed away about a week and a half ago. And Ken spent 25 years forging one of the finest wind ensemble, band, and actually music department programs at Shorecrest High School. And after he retired, he went on and spent another 25 years conducting the wind ensemble at Edmonds Community College. He was the president of Washington Music Educators Association. For those of us that knew him, he was an amazing mentor and an individual who was always there to support the things that we were doing in our classrooms or on the stage. Again, we enjoy the foundation that these people have created and left for us to go ahead and continue building on. And I wanted to take a moment tonight and add a piece, in particular because Ken was a mentor of mine, just to recognize the work that he did, the influence that it has had on this organization and on school districts around the state of Washington. And so we're adding a piece tonight in his honor. In 1899, Elgar wrote a series of 14 variations, the Enigma variations. And the 9th variation has become one that is well known among musicians. He wrote it for a friend of his. All of the variations are for people. And the 9th variation is entitled Nimrod. He wrote it for a good friend of his, Augustus Jaeger, because that individual was a confidant, was a mentor, was a guiding influence for Elgar. And I think that offering this tonight in memory of my mentor, an excellent teacher, and a fantastic friend. This is for Ken. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. For the percussionists aren't done, apparently. Thank you so much for joining us for this concert, and may the 4th be with you.